Welcome, everyone. I'm James Shore, and this is the Art of Agile Development Book Club. Today, we're discussing energized work, which I think is a particularly relevant topic, given the great resignation that's going on and how hard it is to hire programmers these days. I'm going to get things started by reading an excerpt from my book. And then, as a reminder, the second edition is now available, and you can get it by going to Amazon, your favorite bookstore, or you can find out more information at jamesshore.com/s/AOAD2. Energized work. We work at a pace that allows us to do our best, most productive work indefinitely. I love my work. I enjoy solving problems, writing good code, watching tests pass, and I especially love removing code while refactoring. But if I'm on a team with unclear goals, little collective responsibility and infighting, I'll wake up dreading going into work. I'll put in my hours at the office, but I'll be tempted to spend my mornings reading email and my afternoons picking at code while surfing through marginally related websites. We've all been in this situation. Because we're professionals, we strive to produce quality work even when we feel demoralized. Still, consider the times of greatest productivity in your career. Do you notice a big difference when you wake up and feel eager to start work? Isn't it much more satisfying to stop on time at the end of the day, knowing that you accomplished something solid and useful? Energized work is about recognizing that although professionals can do good work under difficult circumstances, they do their best, most productive work when they're energized and motivated. So our first question is, what drains your energy for work, even when it's material you'd normally be excited about working on? And as always, there's been some great conversations in the Discord. You can find that Discord invite by going to jamesshore.com/s/AOAD2 Discord. Drew Bryan had a response to this. He said, I find for myself when I'm experiencing burnout or when talking to others who are feeling burned out, it's not about the workload. There'll always be more work than we can do. Instead, I feel it has much more to do with engagement and having a shared sense of vision for how the work they were doing is a part of the larger success of the org. And then as the conversation evolved, the following themes emerged. Engagement. Burnout is less about the workload and more about the inspiration. People can accomplish a ton and not feel burned out when they are excited and passionate about what they do and feel empowered or trusted. Focus. Cognitive load is a struggle. Pulling people in a lot of different directions and expecting them to continually broaden their scope causes a lot of context switching, which can really cause mental exhaustion. Teams need to be organized around the work for sustainability. And reminder, if any of these ideas resonate with you, just go ahead and raise your hand in the chat and I'll give you a chance to chime in. 3, pressure burns people out, especially when it's individually focused versus team focused, or when it's artificial pressure. When people feel like they are always fending off, getting yelled at, or beat up for not delivering, they get stressed and scared. And 4, lack of support. If people feel like their work is continually an uphill battle and they are always pushing against the organizational grain, it can really wear on folks. This is tied to 1 to 3, teams/individuals end up feeling like the organization and leadership are continually stacked against them rather than working for them. These all really rang true to me. One that I would add is I find it toil or tedium in my work when I have to wait a long time for a build to finish, or when I'm constantly doing what Mike Hill calls GAC, geek at keyboard. That's when you're just spending time trying to get the software to run or build or not actually solve the problem you have in front of you, but the tests aren't working and another one has failed randomly and you have to run them again because they're flaky. That sort of stuff tends to really drain my energy. So what about all of you? What drains your energy, even when it's work that you would otherwise be excited to work on? Jerome, welcome.
Hey, James. So when I am doing some consulting or retrospectives and I'm just not getting any energy from the individuals, especially now in this Zoom video conference meeting, I'm just like, what am I even doing here? You're giving me nothing.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. It's true in person, of course, but I do find that this Zoom environment makes it much easier to just talk into the void, because people tend to multitask a lot on Zoom, don't they? They you're talking to them and they're not really paying attention. I had somebody recently. It was just a small group conversation. It was 2 or 3 people, and I was interviewing them to understand their situation. And one of the people must not have been paying attention because another participant said, "Oh, I think the work that we're talking about would mean a 10% productivity hit to, and that would be worth it if it didn't last more than a certain amount of time." And later on, the other person, who again must not have been paying attention, went to their manager and their manager's manager and said, "I heard Jim say we were going to have 10% productivity for 6 months." How do you get that? And putting the positive spin on that, I'm assuming that they were doing something else and they heard one of their colleagues say 10%. And as often happens, it translated through their brain, through their existing fears and concerns, into something I had said. But I can't help but thinking if they'd really been paying full attention, that wouldn't have happened, at least not quite so egregiously. Thanks very much, Jerome. I appreciate the comment. Do you have anything you wanted to add to that? And I'd love to hear your other thoughts. There were some more comments in the Discord. Brandon Duff wrote, I've noticed, responding to Drew, I've noticed a lot of the same things. I think the suggestion to reduce workload comes from a good place and is the right idea if people are overworked or their home life is taking a lot of their time, as it was for a lot of people in 2020. But I've also noticed a vicious cycle take hold when reducing workload is the only tool. Workload is reduced because of burnout due to lack of motivation, which results in less impact, which leads to a further feeling of uselessness, which increases burnout, which we try to remedy by decreasing work. Of course, the solution isn't just more work, it's more engaging, impactful work. So I thought this was insightful as well, that burnout doesn't come from having too much work to do necessarily, although it can, I think. And there was a long conversation that continued on from there that I won't quote about, the value of vacations and whether they were necessary. But I find that if I'm really engaged by my work, I have trouble going home at the end of the day. I'm not getting burned out because of the amount of work I do. I get burned out when the work is just not impactful, or I feel like it's not relevant to the things I care about. And I wonder, with the amount of ad tech that people have to work on today, especially in the bigger software companies, I wonder how many people in those organizations are experiencing the same thing. Jim has a comment. Jim, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, James. Yeah, I think this idea of impactful work is really important, and communicating the impact of the work. So understanding, who the customers are, key stakeholders, what's important to them, what is our definition of success in doing that, and what are kind of the key, I would call them health indicators. There's 2 aspects of health. One is obviously personal health and team health, the human dimension there, but also the thing that we build, is it healthy? So one of the best ways to get insights around that is to understand that definition of success. What are the measures? What are the proofs that we would look at? Just like you would go to a doctor and get a diagnosis when you're not feeling well. What are the indicators around our product that tell us that it's not healthy? And I think the most important indicator there is really that impact indicator. And whether that's more sales or fewer defects in production, or maybe lives saved. Maybe your product's in something that helps people have better quality of life in terms of healthcare. Might be fewer deaths, for all I know. But whatever that key indicator is, and making sure that everybody understands what that is and gets on the same page, has a shared understanding and a shared buy-in, that's really what's important here. And if any of those indicators are showing that we are not as healthy as we wish to be, that's an area of improvement that we should potentially focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this ties back to purpose, which we talked about with Diana Larson in the last session. Mm-hmm. I've been working recently with a company that is literally in healthcare. They do supporting analytics for healthcare. It's extremely impactful work, but they had never done any sort of purpose exercise. And so they didn't really feel connected to the value of their work. And so one of the things we did was do that purpose exercise, and now people do feel that connection. And I haven't done a survey to see, if that's improved morale, but I can't help but think it must. It's definitely something that's come back, that people do say now, yes, I feel a lot more connection to the work. I do find, though, Jim, before I let you go, I do find that doing those indicators is really hard for organizations. Like I can coach them to do it, but they don't tend to keep them up. So what do you do to help organizations do that?
Well, it's kind of like a virtuous cycle is what I find, is that if we, and it is not easy, if we do identify some key indicators, some key meaningful indicators that truly give us insights into the health of our product, and we communicate that effectively to everyone in the ecosystem around that product space, including customers. I mean, go as far as you need to, in defining that ecosystem and establishing meaningful, reasonable targets, short term, where we have long-term goals, but short-term measurable goals. And so we're not just defining success in a macro, but also in a micro, more of an iterative type of approach, and looking at the results of our work against that target. Develop some metrics that allow you to evaluate: did we hit the target? Did we reach it by this time frame? Are we making progress towards the target? So you get this reinforcement mechanism in there that kind of sets off the endorphins. Hey, we won, and at the same time, paying attention to, are the outcomes that we're hoping for also being realized? In addition to the indicators, are we achieving the outcomes? Because sometimes you make assumptions around what's the appropriate indicator or metric, and it turns out to be wrong. Or at another layer of the onion, maybe our definition of success is off. Mm-hmm. So you're always looking to look at the definition of success. It's like a future state, and by definition, that's a hypothesis. We don't know whether that better state that we're envisioning is in fact going to be better. So we have to have constant vigilance in as we do the work. Essentially, we're running an experiment on that hypothesis, and we need to take an honest look at the outcomes of those experiments, not just the outputs, but the outcomes. And the whole concept of Agile is to be adaptable, right? So to be able to, when we get new information, make changes to those hypotheses. So I think the way of reinforcing it is make it visible, run the experiments against specific targets that you establish that define what success looks like, and make it so that it's almost like a game where people understand what winning is, and they also understand what losing is. so that you're motivated to act in a way together, have team behaviors and other dynamics that are conducive to essentially to winning. And activate that kind of competitive nature we have within ourselves as human beings. We like to win. I don't think anybody likes to lose. So figure out what winning looks like and make sure that people understand what that is. And I think also paying attention to blockers. What is in the way of us being healthy in terms of ourselves as individuals, as in terms of teams, and in terms of our product. What are the things that are counterproductive?
Great. Thanks very much, Jim. Drew had his hand up for a little while. Drew, go ahead.
Hey, good morning. I just had one more thought, kind of quick to add to that. I think another key piece for me that's really rung true is kind of how connected can you be with your end users as a developer? And for me, I know every organization and product is a little bit different, but the more I'm able to see or have interactions directly with end users who use the products and get their reactions and understand their challenges and what are they trying to accomplish, or or the reverse of, sit and watch their workflows or how they interact with a product that we built, and hear kind of the positive reactions of like, oh, this feature that was added was so amazing, and this has really changed my workflow. And that stuff is really reaffirming and positive. And this kind of goes back a little bit to our conversation weeks ago about generalists and specialists. But one of the things that I've seen as a little bit of a struggle is when teams have dedicated product managers or managers or other people who go out and kind of speak on behalf of the team to customers and user groups. Sometimes that connection is missing, and there, every individual is also different, and there are some people that kind of don't necessarily like that direct interaction. But for me, I've found that to be something that's very motivating to hear directly from end users how the work that I've done and the features that I've built and the capabilities that I've added have directly impacted them. And either for good in having them appreciate what was done, or hearing their feedback that there's more that they want to do, or other things that we haven't done yet, and kind of creating that motivation to do more for them and help make their work even more successful. So
yeah. I mean, that's certainly motivating for me. I think for a lot of people, I would assume for a lot of people, it's just good to know that the work you're making is making a difference, and hearing directly from users is certainly the most direct way of getting that feedback. One thing I've been seeing lately, and I don't know if it's just the companies I'm working with these days, but I'm seeing these really strong distinctions between POs, product owners, and devs, and this really sharp delineation where the POs feel, Scrum has got so many terrible names, Sprint and product owner, but the product owners are taking that owner term very much to heart, to the point where they feel like they own the customer relationship and nobody else is allowed to talk. They're very protective of that relationship. And it makes me sad when I see that. But I haven't, the couple of organizations that I'm working with recently that I'm thinking of, I'm not trying too hard to fix it, because it is so tied up. They're really feel like this is their thing. And I wonder if some of it comes from a place of perhaps insecurity. Do we, if other people can talk to stakeholders, what value do we bring? I'm going to feel free to continue discussing on this, but this sort of segues into the next discussion prompt, which is I'd like to hear more about what makes your work exciting. So when you've had that great energized experience at work, what are some of the other things that you've seen, like, for example, talking directly to stakeholders or customers and finding out from them? So while you're thinking about that, Michael has a comment. Michael, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, hello. Does this sound okay?
Yeah, you're coming through great.
Okay, I just want to add, I think there is one key ingredient, which is fun. And if you have fun in the honest way, I think the success will almost find itself. And maybe, as you have said about the POs and their inability to relinquish their control, this is even more up this hill, because it requires even more giving up of control. But I've seen that the key difference really is when you're having fun, it somehow indicates to you that things are okay, and you're gonna be okay, right? And that is what makes you come back to the work again and do stuff.
It reminds me, it sort of ties into that idea of team dynamics and gelled team, right? The best experiences I've ever had were on team. And I haven't had this experience very often, partly because I'm a consultant and my job is to help other people get here, but I don't get to participate myself anymore. But back in the day when I was part of a team full time, one of the best teams I ever worked with, we had that gelled experience. And we were just building a developer website for an operating system, and one of the ones you're probably thinking of. And it wasn't, we never talked to our customers, who were, thousands of people who were all over the world. we it wasn't, changing the world in any substantial way, and the operating system was actually on the decline and has since basically disappeared. But it was so fun to work together because we had that gelled experience. I would happily go back and work with that team again on basically anything, except for probably ad tech. And that's that's not because it's de-energizing, but because I just have moral issues with it. So yeah, thank you for that, Michael. I really agree with that. There were a couple of comments in the Discord about times when people were excited to go to work. And Eleonora Della Bernardina was talking about coaching and said, I try to lead by example. I don't ask them to stretch. I don't ask them to pair or mob. I'll just show them what it looks like. Each morning, I attend one of the daily of the teams that I'm following as a coach, and I pair with them as much as I can, regardless of the main skills involved. And then said a few other things and went on to say, by the way, this leads me to answer your daily question. I truly love to be in the Gemba, and this is what makes me excited to go to work. I really enjoy solving problems. Again, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this subject. Trolling Monkey in the Discord had a long comment. I asked for a story, and he took that literally. So if you want the details, check out the Discord. But he started out saying, "Dear Diary, oh my God, I had one of the best weeks ever. I had to tell you about it because I know this has been uncommon recently." Then there was a lot of details here. I'm just going to sort of skim. Monday, I hosted my first learning hour where we went over approvals testing. The turnout was awesome, and so was the discussion. I hope to continue this concept and improve on it. Tuesday, I got to facilitate a brand new Iteration 0 event, C4 modeling, with the Infinity Dolphins. I presume that's a team. Wednesday, I doubled down with the Infinity Dolphins. We really dove deep into that C4 modeling. Each session, we got better and faster at it. Amazing what dedicated time to submerge yourself into a single problem can accomplish. Thursday, we got to try a new experiment. Surya and the team wanted to try out the Pomodoro technique for collaborating. It was a fun experiment, and we even tweaked it for the next session. Got to love that continuous improvement mindset. During lunch on Friday, I was offered another opportunity to collaborate with a completely different group that I didn't work with this week. I jumped on that opportunity. Spread the love. TLDR, I love collaborating with everyone, and it fills me with joy. And again, there is much more on the Discord. So if you're curious, check it out. But I really love this because the joy did come through. And I know for me as a coach, the reason I do this, what sort of gets me up in the morning, is knowing that I'm going to make a difference in somebody's life. And I think this sort of ties back to, I think it was Drew who was talking about just seeing that customer feedback, or in the case of a team working with a team, seeing that team feedback. Drew, welcome back.
Well, Jim, I was just going to kind of go back to one of the things you said a few minutes ago about, not fighting your build and, testing processes and waiting forever. I think taking that a step further, what I think, one of the things I think really does energize people and make people excited is not having barriers and constraints to doing what they love, right? The more time you can spend focused on solving problems and writing code and doing those things you like, and not dealing with all of that other kind of supporting or complicating stuff that reduces that. If you're spending all your time fighting with infrastructure, dealing with broken builds, that can be that can be kind of annoying, and it ultimately takes time away from doing what your passion is and what you love. So I think an environment that focuses you on that stuff that you enjoy the most, solving the problems that you want to solve, is really exciting and energizing.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that. And I think the thing is removing that friction. It is something that gives immediate benefit. A lot of the stuff we do as software developers, test-driven development, for example, it has a lot of benefits, but they can be a while down the road before you really feel those, or sometimes the benefit is the lack of pain down the road. So it's hard to get that direct connection. But I know that for me, just speeding up my build, I try to hit a second or less on my feedback loop. And going from 10 seconds to less than a second is a major improvement in my quality of life. And I've experienced this enough times now that one of the things that brings me joy is actually just making my build process better and faster. And whenever I have the chance to do that, it really makes me happy.
It's almost a game in and of itself to try
it is. And I think you have to be careful not to get sucked into that, because there isn't that much difference between less than a second and less than half a second. But I still find myself looking at the dependency analyzer I wrote to try to make it eke out those few extra tenths of a second. Thanks very much for your comments, Drew. Jim has another comment. Jim, welcome back.
James, can you hear me?
Yeah, coming through loud and clear.
Okay, excellent. So I think the idea of work being fun, I think any kind of work can kind of be fun. I mean, there's a possibility there. And coming back again to communicating what is the work that we are here to do, and as long as that work has meaning, there are different preferences. Some people like really challenging work that's kind of innovative and creative, and probably at the other end of the extreme, there are people that like kind of routine, same thing every day kind of work. And I think one of the things that's helpful here in having engaging work is to ensure that you get the right people on the team. And over time, the nature of the work associated with a given product will change. It'll wax and wane, and go from this innovative, creative thing to more routine stuff, and then maybe back up again to some innovative and creative kind of stuff as the customer demands and technologies change and the like. So I think it's really important for organizations in considering their organizational design and how people get staffed onto various teams is to enable a flow of people to the places where the work that they really enjoy exists. And if there is a change in that work, after they've arrived and been there for a while, to something that they don't enjoy so much, is enabling them to move on and get to another team that's in that stage of their work. Even to the extent that you might actually pay somebody to leave. If it turns out that none of the work in the organization fits anymore with what really drives that person and what they're passionate about. If you actually give somebody a little golden parachute to leave the organization, maybe perhaps pay for some training or promote, support them in their new job search outside of the organization, other members that are still in the organization will look at that and say, wow, I don't have to hide from people that I'm unhappy, in the nature of the work that I'm doing on this team. My organization will actually help me move within the organization if that's, if there are opportunities available there. And they'll actually enable me to move on if necessary. The old adage of one bad apple spoils the barrel, I think, is true. And I think organizations need to pay attention to that, is that the unhappy employee is like a spoiled apple, and it infects the rest of the team. So I think that's something that's really important to think about, is what's the nature of the work, and making sure that we get people who want to do that kind of work, engaged in it. Not that we should always, be doing only the things that, we're passionate about. Obviously, there's going to be a balance here. But I think getting people engaged in the areas where they really thrive is important.
Yeah. That reminds me of, I believe it's Netflix, who famously doesn't offer signing bonuses, but it does offer departure bonuses, which is a really interesting idea. There's so many impacts to the people you work with. I mean, you spend so much time on a team with your fellow team members. So being on the right team, doing the right things, is so important. And sometimes people just have personality conflicts, and it's nobody is to blame. It's not this person's fault. It's not that person's fault. It is just the way they work together is not compatible. And that's okay. This is why I really love FAST, the fluid scaling technology that I've had a chance to really dig into over the last several months, because now you can have an organization of, several dozen people and people can move around on their own to the team that has the right fit for them. And seeing that play out, just it's so amazing. It's something I would strongly recommend that anybody else try, because it does give you that sense, like you're talking about, Jim. My organization supports me, and yeah, we've got to make progress. We can't just all go do the fun stuff. But it turns out that different people have different ideas of what's fun, and people, if you emphasize that you're here to do work that's good for the organization, people will respect that and follow through on that as well. We are getting into the last 10 minutes of the book club. As usual, the time has flown by. So I'm going to skip ahead to the final discussion prompt, which is, how would you like organizations you work with to invest in supporting energized work? So again, if you could wave that magic wand and have an organization do anything, what would you do? And Jim sort of touched on it. Had this idea of, departure bonuses, making sure that people are on the right teams. On the Discord, Drew Bryan wrote, we struggle with leaders being too focused on projects and tactics. There's a lack of focus on building inspiration and discussing our plans for a better future world. I wish our leaders spent more time evangelizing and less time project managing. Second would be to shift focus from individual performance, accountability, and recognition to team-based. I think this is a really big one, actually, that hasn't come up yet. I feel much more energized when I'm part of a team who's successful together versus competing on my own to meet my own performance and growth goals. And there's been a bunch of other things talked about today. We've talked about having that ability to talk to customers directly, emphasizing low friction. Which of these things or other things that we haven't talked about, which would you really like to see in your organization? Or if you were to join an organization, which would you particularly look for? Michael, go ahead.
Hello again. So to me, it's personal coaching.
Hmm.
If you can support the individuals on the personal level, no matter how their performance goes, no matter what, then at some point you're bound to get a better team.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Thanks very much, Michael. And that coaching, I think, is so key. And I don't see it as a dedicated practice at a lot of organizations. It's sort of ad hoc. There is one organization that I'm thinking of that I worked with 5 years ago, and actually I've started working again with recently. And they really stood out because they had this coaching practice with coaches who really knew what they were doing. And went out and did that coaching for folks. Tony has a comment. Tony, welcome.
Thanks. Is the sounds okay for everyone?
Yeah, you're coming through fine.
Oh, okay, thank you. So kind of similar with Michael regarding to the coaching. One thing that I noticed is instead of the company had a coaching, they form a team and they call it as an enable team. And essentially, for most of my experience, been kind of like working with the enabler team, mainly on the kind of like platform and architecture teams. There could be an enabler team for a different area of the company, and essentially those teams kind of spread the coaching and also enable all of the other team on a certain kind of like either technologies or either product or either something for the company. And I think one of the main reasons why they formed the enabler team is apparently for some reason the technical, at least I think for the technology side, the technical depth is always be accumulated and there is no clear, as far as I can tell, no clear direction or no clear way to handle it effectively. And I think it's kind of a repeating pattern where the company form an enabler team to kind of get it kind of going.
Thank you. That enabling team terminology sounds like it's coming from the Team Topologies book, which is a great book for sort of horizontally scaling teams. And one of the concepts in there, of course, is this idea of the team that is there to enable the other teams to be successful. What else would you like to see from organizations? What is it that makes work energizing versus draining? And the comments in the Discord on this were very similar to what we've been hearing so far. Trolling Monkey, for example, said, from my observations, it's 100% buy-in and ownership. Drew Bryan, who had a lot to say. Thanks, Drew. Drew's also been commenting here. Wrote that the thing that first drew me to software development was the balance of logic and creativity. You start with very real, discrete problems and have a nearly infinite number of solutions. Applying creativity to solve a logic problem in a way that is new, innovative, and unexpected is a lot of fun. That never seems to get old for me. Professionally, as my career has evolved, I found that having the empowerment and autonomy to do this is what I find energizing. I like having end-to-end ownership, control over the products I build and the technologies and architectures we use. Combine that with an exciting product space and a successful market strategy and a great team to work with, and you have a winning combo for energy, in my opinion. One thing that I find interesting is that in this conversation, nobody has said anything about the number of hours worked. But I think for a lot of organizations, they do think that energized work is just about how long are people in the office, giving people those vacations, not overworking them. And maybe this is just because things aren't as bad as they were in the 90s when there was a lot of crunch time and death marches and stuff. But it's not enough to just be respectful of people's time, I think. You also need to be respectful of the other things that bring people energy. And I love that this conversation has brought that out. So I think this is going to be a good place to stop. Thank you all very much for joining me today. Our next week's session is on safety, psychological safety. And I am very happy to announce that Geeta Klitgard will be joining that for that session. She's going to be joining us from Europe. She is an Agile coach, trainer, and mentor focused on helping organizations implement psychological safety, responsibility, and accountability. And she, of course, is the author of the psychological safety section of the book, The Art of Agile Development. So that is going to be a great session. Don't miss it. And I'll be putting that announcement up soon. Be sure to follow the Discord to find out more about that. Of course, it will be next Friday, 8 a.m. Pacific. And the Discord can be found at jamesshore.com/s/AOAD2 Discord, or it will go up on jamesshore.com and you can look at the new page or subscribe to the RSS feed there. Thank you once again, everybody. Appreciate you joining us, and I will see you all next week.